Allah. Magbar America. 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 Magbar Israel.
That footage was taken 2 days ago in the Iranian parliament, where government representatives chanted, "Death to America, death to Israel." Yesterday, one day after these scenes had been shot, Iran agreed to attend talks, beginning on Friday, with America. Today, another day later, that prospect seems to be less than certain, with the Iranians now saying, maybe, maybe not. Both sides, the Iranian regime and America, tentatively offer hope in the form of possibility of a non-military resolution to the current standoff. But both sides also continue to issue strong threats in the event that things do not work out peacefully. So much is at stake, and it often seems that the lead characters, America and Iran, are improvising as they go. This comment was posted on Monday night on X by Benny Sabti, a friend of State of Tel Aviv and beyond, and an Israeli citizen who fled Iran with his family as a teenager. Benny is now one of the foremost experts on his native country in the world. Here in the photo, you see Benny yesterday, and he's speaking with United States Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. Benny is a deep skeptic about Iran's intentions and ability to negotiate in good faith, period. As he writes in this post that you're reading right now, he asked Steve Witkoff not to give Iran any more time. They've had enough. And yes, I do know how Witkoff responded, but I will honor the private nature of the exchange that Benny shared with me. Instead, I'll offer this. Later, after that encounter, Benny posted the following. You can see it on the screen now, reflecting the profound anger, dismay, frustration that he clearly feels and that is shared by so many Iranians, both in the country and the diaspora. They believe they had been betrayed by President Trump. It was several weeks ago now that President Trump told the Iranian people that help was on its way. We're locked and loaded. And they believed him. And they poured out into the streets by the tens, hundreds of thousands. And we don't even know how many, but we know that it's likely in the tens of thousands of those civilians, unarmed. They were murdered by regime forces, as well as mercenaries from Iraq and other Middle Eastern countries that have been operating in the Islamic Republic of Iran since December 28th. And now, the people of Iran are kind of dismayed. Now you're saying negotiation is the answer? You said help was on its way. Is it? In today's podcast, Yaakov Katz and I parse and analyze the complex and very confusing environment, and we wonder, have the Iranian people been betrayed by the West again? I'm Vivian Berkovich, former Canadian ambassador to Israel. Let's do this. Please note that in this episode, we include several videos while we're speaking, so you'll just be seeing the visuals and we speak over it. For those of you listening just to the audio version, I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of that. Thanks. Monday, February 2nd, about 1:30 in the afternoon in Israel, and wonderful to see you, Yaakov Katz, and thanks again for joining State of Tel Aviv and Beyond.
Always great to be with you, Viv.
Welcome back. I know you had another trip to the States. I think it was last week, and hope it was successful.
Thank God got to see some new places that haven't been in a while. So,
Where'd you go? What are the new places?
first time I ever went to New Orleans, by the way. I had never been there, gave a lecture there. What a city. Wow. I have to say, cool architecture. Obviously, people know the music, know the food, French Quarter, walked around a lot, had about a day and a bit. But also, I went to, and this was a surprise to me, the National World War II Museum is in New Orleans. Why, you might ask? Interesting. There, remember the boats in Saving Private Ryan that come up on the shore of Normandy and the soldiers jump out of them? Everyone knows these boats. They were called the Higgins boats. They were made by this guy Higgins from New Orleans in the shipyard down there. And they started a museum, grew into the World War II, the National Museum. And I have to say, fantastic museum.
I've never been to New Orleans either, and definitely got to get there. Anywhere else of interest?
Then it was to the Jewish capital of America, which has become South Florida. So it's not New York anymore. It's not LA. It's South Florida. If you go to the United States and you're not going to South Florida, I don't know where you're going anymore.
I agree with you. I spend more time in South Florida now than I do in Canada when I go.
100%.
All right. From the less sublime to the more sublime, Iran. I know that all of our listeners and viewers are wondering what the heck. And I just want to reassure you all out there that we are wondering the same thing. We are sitting here, Yaakov, I'm sure you feel the same way, thinking when, what, how bad? Are we going to be in our shelters for days or weeks on end? We have no clearer picture. Other than that, there's this really very strong sense that something big is going to go down. These huge warships, hundreds of combat airplanes, one or two submarines, you can fill in the blanks, are in the region and in position, and as President Trump says, locked and loaded. At the same time, we have this red line that President Trump articulated a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, saying to the regime in Iran, if you start killing these people, these civilians who are protesting peacefully, we're going to come at you and we're going to come at you hard. Well, that red line has been crossed. We know that. And President Trump has not hit softly or hard. He's in recent weeks been indicating as this buildup amasses that his strong preference is a diplomatic solution. But we have, of course, on the one side, Iran saying, yeah, sure, we'll talk, but we're not putting anything to do with our nuclear program on the table. We're not prepared to concede or give way in any way with respect to our ballistic missile program. So the latest news as of a few minutes ago is that the US and Iran will convene in Ankara, Turkey, in the coming days to discuss a possible diplomatic solution. And that, I think, rounds out the immediate tableau and where things stand. Tell us what Yaakov Katz sees.
I think you did say this, and I think it's just important to set out and say also, we don't know what's going to happen. I don't think really anyone knows what's going to happen because it could be that Donald Trump has yet to make a decision, even if he's going to make a decision.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it will be up to him. All signs indicate, at least those that we see, that there are going to be some sort of negotiation or talks held between the United States and the Iranians. Steve Witkoff is expected to arrive in Israel on Tuesday, hold talks with the prime minister. Arakshi, the foreign minister of Iran, maybe those talks will take place between Witkoff and the Iranian foreign minister, maybe in Ankara, maybe somewhere else. But I also, and you mentioned the military buildup, so let me just say a couple words about that for a moment. This is probably the largest U.S. military buildup in the Middle East and definitely in the Persian Gulf definitely since the Iraq War, 100%. You have never seen anything of this size or scale. We all remember in the beginning of the war, October 7th, the famous Joe Biden don't speech. The Lincoln came here. That's the same carrier strike group that's here now in the Persian Gulf. Then there were others that came. There was in the East Med, there was in the Persian Gulf. But what you have now is, in addition to the Lincoln, the Abraham Lincoln Strike Group, which comes here, by the way, with carrier air wings, with different U.S. destroyers, the Peterson, Superence, the Murphy. You have the Delbert D. Black destroyer that's now also in the Red Sea. You basically have about 10 to a dozen vessels in this region right now that came here to be on standby. You have literal combat ships. Those are ones that are meant to work in closer waters to shorelines to be able to help with protecting strategic assets. There's the USS Canberra, the USS Tulsa. There's others. There's other destroyers. There's the USS Roosevelt, which is a bit outside the Middle East on standby. You have submarines. Just to give you a sense of what's here, not to mention the F-15s and the F-35s and the Hornets, the F-18s. This is a massive force, right? So you have these two things that are happening at the same time. On the one hand, talk of talks. On the other hand, a massive military buildup.
I'd like to pause here and share a short, minute-and-a-half-long video from a reliable source, a YouTube channel, Military Mechanics. And in this short video, they provide a visual report on the buildup of American force in the Middle East today. It is something to behold. Have a look.
The U.S. military is quietly reshaping its force posture across the Middle East, and the pattern points to preparation. At the center of the buildup is the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, now transiting the Indian Ocean after being redirected west. A carrier brings more than aircraft. It brings command and control, strike depth, electronic warfare, and layered air defense in one moving package. Lincoln's air wing fields F-35Cs, F/A, 18E/F. Super Hornets, EA-18G Growlers, and E-2D Hawkeyes, backed by cruisers and destroyers carrying hundreds of vertical launch missile cells. That's immediate strike capacity, missile defense, and electronic attack, all survivable at sea. At the same time, U.S. logistics activity is increasing. C-17 cargo aircraft are flowing into the region, moving personnel, munitions, and air defense hardware. Patriot and THAAD batteries are being repositioned to harden regional bases against ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drone attacks. In the air domain, F-15E Strike Eagles supported by KC-135 tankers have redeployed from Europe, reinforcing both offensive strike options and defensive counter-air missions. These aircraft have already proven critical in intercepting long-range drones and cruise missiles. Naval forces already in theater include multiple Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and at least one submarine, expanding ballistic missile defense coverage and Tomahawk strike reach. Notably, there has been no visible surge of bombers forward-based yet. This suggests the U.S. is building flexibility first, not committing prematurely. This is what modern military signaling looks like. Layered forces, distributed firepower, logistics first, and options kept deliberately open.
Now, back to Yaakov Katz and why President Trump has ordered this military buildup in the Middle East.
And then we look at what's happening in Iran. In Iran itself, it seems that the regime has defeated the protests. We don't really see much protest taking place anymore. What a price that was paid, but the protests are not making the noise that they were in the past. And the question now is really, okay, so if the killing is not happening like it was when Donald Trump made his original warning, what is the purpose of all of this right now, right? And here we start to get into, what does Donald Trump really want? And that's what's, I think, at the core or at the source of all this lack of clarity. Does he want a regime change? Well, if he wants a regime change, then military force is going to be a piece of that puzzle. But if he doesn't want regime change and he wants a deal, then a deal will be better achieved through negotiations. But then we get into another question. What deal does he want? Does he want a deal that's just about not rebuilding the nuclear sites, giving up the 400 kilograms of enriched uranium that's somewhere buried under the rubble in Fordo? Or does he want a deal like the one that Israel's trying to push him to, which would include also restrictions on ballistic missiles and cutting off the support of the proxy army, Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and Houthis? And then let's say he decides to go in a middle ground. He wants to get the bigger deal. He doesn't want regime change, but he feels that to get the bigger deal, he needs to take out some assets or show that he's serious and do something militarily. Where does that lead us? And I think that this is what we know, right? Everything I just said is what we know with speculation. But here's the other thing that I always caution here. Everything could be a show. Everything could be fake. I was watching the news last night, which is always a mistake because they're never really telling you much anyhow. And one of the reporters on Channel 12, that's like the most watched Israeli channel, says, and US officials told me that this time when Trump says he wants talk, it's being honest and sincere, and it's not a bluff or a ploy to distract and really under that to ruse. That's not what it is. And I'm like saying to myself, are you really saying that? Like, do you really think that they might not be fooling you to fool them to fool them? Come on. So everything we say and everything we think we know, I go back to what I started with. It's all very difficult to tell.
Yeah, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. I have to interject with a moment of levity, as inappropriate as it may be, but I was watching that same news report last night, and I expanded my Hebrew vocabulary to include the word lebalef.
The balef. That's right. To bluff. But this could all be being done le balef, the Iranians or us. And by the way, we should not assume that this is also not meant to be aimed at some sort of, I don't want to say psychological warfare, but an information campaign also about Israelis, right? Get Israel worked up, get the Iranians worked up, get the whole region. There's a lot of moving pieces here that I don't think anyone really sees the entire picture right now.
I want to get back to the issue of regime change in a moment, but you've segued us right into another really important issue that arose on the news last night. You likely stuck around long enough to listen to Amos Yadlin, former head of military intelligence with the IDF, of course, and also the head of the INSS, probably the preeminent security think tank in Israel. And Amos Yadlin was on the news last night saying, as you're saying, a lot of moving parts. We don't really know. Nobody really knows what's happening. However, do not rule out the possibility that Iran is planning some kind of preemptive strike against Israel, because they approach these problems and these situations in what I think it's fair to say, characterized as something of a counterintuitive way. They are very smart, very clever, but always thinking outside the box. And most of the dialogue and discussion that we've been hearing, both in Israel and in the US, has been focused on as if it's some kind of immutable law that if there's an attack, it's going to be the Americans attack first, the Iranians counterattack and hit Israel hard, and then all bets are off. What do you think about what Amos Yadlin had to say last night? The next 45 minutes or so of this podcast are available to premium subscribers of State of Tel Aviv and beyond. Please consider becoming one today. Just go to stateoftelaviv.com and you will be prompted from there. We are a small, independent media enterprise, and we rely on our listeners' support to deliver the content that you appreciate. Yaakov and I continue in this podcast to discuss many aspects of the Iran-America standoff before moving on to the Board of Peace, the rebuilding of the Gaza Strip, and a particularly, disturbing, alarming domestic development in recent days, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu directly blaming President Biden for the deaths of IDF soldiers. That statement that he made turned into a bit of a frisson among certain prominent journalists, including Yaakov Katz, who became directly involved in the exchange. It is significant, and it is concerning that Prime Minister Netanyahu chose to make the remarks that he did. Thanks to all our subscribers for being here. Hope to see you on the other side. Until next time. We love hearing from you, so please comment on our website, stateoftelaviv.com, or send us a note to vivian@stateoftelaviv.com. That's VIVIAN@stateoftelaviv.com. And if you go to our website, stateoftelaviv.com, you can find the subscribe button and take it from there. Hope that you do that. On behalf of the State of Tel Aviv core team, Jan Zabo, our creative, graphic, visual, and marketing man, Amir White, producer and editor extraordinaire, sound guy, who is also impressively patient with me and my boomer tech deficiencies, and our social media manager who pitches in on everything. Thank you, Maya Naftalin. Thanks to the team, and thank you, listeners, for being here. Until next time, stay safe.